Okay, so in 2.5, we looked at the line of best fit, drawing the line of best fit and using that line to make predictions. We also found the regression equation by hand. You saw the work I needed to see when you are asked to find the regression equation by hand. 2.6 is still looking more at the regression equation, but we're not finding it using the calculator. You guys should have had the tip sheet to go through those steps, entering your list into your calculator, where the lin-reg function is on your calculator. We're also going to be using that equation to make predictions. Okay. So first, going through that tip sheet, you should be able to see how you enter lists into your calculator, and we're using the lin-reg. It kind of has a little cheat sheet, ax plus b. That is slope-intercept form. A is your slope, b is your y-intercept. On your calculator, you go to stat, calc, and it should be the fourth option down. Now, depending on your calculator, how old it is, you're either going to have to type it in as lin-reg, L1, comma, L2. The comma is important, you need to have that. That is just saying that's your X list, that's your Y list, your X variable and your Y variable. On the newer calculators, it actually says X list, Y list. Okay, you still need to tell it L1, L2. So just make sure you pay attention to what list you're plugging your data into. L1, L2, you should have at least 6 lists into your calculator, so you make sure you pay attention to which one you're going to be using for your data sets. Now, if I'm looking at this, African American elected officials, okay, we have our X variable, Y variable, and it's not going to have to tell you what those mean. Okay, it's very important you read these paragraphs explaining what the two variables represent. X is the year since 1980, Y is the number of African American elected officials in the U.S. that year. Okay, so think about what those means. X is the year since 1980. Okay, so you can see X, 4, 5, 6. It's not saying 1986, 1987. It's saying 5 represents 1985, okay? 10 represents 1990. So you're going to have to think through those a little bit. Always think about the variables before you start doing your calculations. Y is the number of African American elected officials, so that's just on the account. In 1985, there was 407. Okay? If you're asked to find the regression equation, X is your L1, Y is your L2. Unless you're doing multiple problems, I always suggest just use L1 and L2. Okay, I'll probably let you know if you need to keep those lists in there. I always like to just use L1 and L2 for each one. So plugging those into L1, L2, you do the lin-reg function. We should be getting y equals 16.055x plus 319.436. Okay, write down what the calculator is telling you. I know these are talking about people, African American elected officials, but they're going to be estimates. So it's okay to have decimals in these problems. Homeowners versus vacation homeowners. X is the number of homeowners, Y is the number of vacation homeowners. Okay, so again, we're talking about a number of people. These are counts. Okay, so the regression equation, L1, L2, lin-reg, Y equals negative 0.795x plus 2,579.841. Okay, we'll talk more about that negative sign and how it affects the slope in a little bit when we start interpreting slope and y-intercept. Right now I want to practice what type of problem you would see about how many vacation homeowners are there when there are 2,200 homeowners. Okay? So this is making your predictions. Okay? Think about 2,200 homeowners. This is our X variable. Okay? So since this is our X variable, to make a prediction, you're taking that value there, plugging it in for X. Negative 0.795. Okay, there's our X, so that's going to be our 2,200 plus 2,597. Sorry, I said that wrong. 2,579.841. Okay, now this is one, plug it into your calculator. Should just do all that work for your order of operations. I have about 830.841. I get that answer right, yes. And label it somehow. Vacation home owners. Okay, just somehow label it. I don't need a paragraph, but something to show me that that does have some meaning to it. Now, these are estimates. I know vacation homeowners, it's a person. You can't have a 0.841 homeowner. Okay, give me the estimate that your calculator is getting you with these calculations. Okay, so you're allowed to give me those decimal answers. I want you to give me those decimal answers, what the calculator gives you. And so again, important. Think about what the variables represent and think about what the question's asking you. For the spelling test, X is the time in minutes random students studied. Y is the number of correctly spelled words. So X is going to be the minutes. Y is the correctly spelled words. Find the regression equation. Y equals 0.305x plus 7.421. About how many words would be spelled correctly if you studied for an hour? Okay, two things here I want to point out. One, it says about. These are estimates. That's the language of estimation. About how many. We're not going to say exactly this many words correct. Okay, it's an estimate. Hopefully it follows this trend so we can predict how many words you will get correct. Also, it's asking for an hour. Our X is in minutes, so make sure you're careful about what you're plugging in for the X variable in this one. 1 hour has 60 minutes. 0.305 times 60, doing some quick conversion there, plus 7.421. And this should be about, I have 25.721 words correct. Okay. About how long did you study if you got 30 words correct? Now, 30 words correct, that's the Y variable. So now we're plugging in for a different variable. Take your time to think about what they're asking for and which variable they're giving you information about. The 30 words is the Y, so I'm plugging that in for that Y variable. Okay. So this should be a quick two-step equation to solve. Subtract your 7.421, divide by 0.305, and I have 70.03 minutes. Okay. So there you go. Two things. Make sure you're paying attention to the units. Make sure you're paying attention to the variables that they're giving you information and what they're asking for. Okay, so there's two more examples. Okay. Now we're going to look at interpreting the equation. Okay, so what does the slope and the y-intercept represent in the problem? So you have your equation, and if I just ask you, what does the slope mean? I'm talking about in context. Okay, I know you might be able to tell me the slope is 0.305. Okay, but what does that 0.305 mean to our situation? So first talking about the slope. Slope represents the increase, decrease of the y for each x unit. Okay, increase, decrease is not dependent if it was a positive or negative value. The second part here that's important is each x unit. It is for each one piece for each of the x variables. Okay, so the x variable is counting one at a time, and that's what we're thinking is happening to the y for each time that that x is gaining one value. This is a little template you can use to write out your answers for slope, and this is how I like to think through my slope. For every, and it just has x variable. This is because this is what's going to change. Okay, think of the problem and what is our x variable. For every x variable, there will be an increase or decrease. You're going to have to decide positive or negative value of, you're plugging in the actual value, then y variable. So these pieces here, you're going to have to plug in from your equation. Thinking about what the problem is for x, what it is for y, what the value actually is in the equation, and that's what you're plugging in. Okay, so thinking about what pieces you need to fill in this sentence. For the y-intercept, this represents the y variable for the value of the y variable when x equals 0. I don't want you to say x equals 0. Tell me what that means in the situation. Okay, so to think about what the x is and what would that do when it is 0. Does it mean what specific year it is? We're thinking something like that. So what does it mean to the situation when x equals 0? What is that value then? Okay, so again, for both of these, slope and y-intercept, you have to tell me what the value is. So knowing the equation is important. Let's look at an example. Going back to the spelling test, x was time in minutes, y is the word spelled correctly, the equation 0.305x plus 7.421. What does the slope represent? What does the y-intercept represent? Okay, so again, the slope. For every x, what's happening to y? For every minute studied, there's an increase of about 0.305 words correct. Okay, so let's think about what we have here. Minutes studied, that's our x variable. Okay, there's an increase of about 0.305 words correct. The words correct is our y variable. So we're talking about both variables. We have the actual value of the slope, 0.305. Make sure also you guys remember where that value comes from. Okay? And we also mentioned it's increasing. It was a positive value, so each time the y variable is increasing. Now for the y-intercept, what does it mean when x is 0? X is the time of minutes studied. Okay, random students have studied for that. You wouldn't say, I studied 0 minutes. Okay, that's not how you would have a conversation with someone. So phrase it like you would normally. If someone studied 0 minutes, what does it mean? Okay, when you don't study, you get about 7.421 words correct. Okay, so again, you don't study. That's just kind of putting in common sense terms what the x variable means when it is 0. Okay, and again, we had that value, 7.421. Okay, think about where we got that from, and you are talking about the y variable, words spelled correctly. Now let's do one last example. African American elected officials, going back to this problem. X is the year since 1980. Y is the number of African American elected officials, and we have our equation that we found earlier. Okay. Slope and y-intercept. What does the slope represent? For every year since 1980, so that's basically just stating this again. X is the year since 1980. For every year since 1980, there's an increase of about 16.055 African American elected officials. Understand again, you can't have a 0.055 person. These are estimates, okay? Even has about 16.055, okay? The y-intercept, what does it mean when x is 0? X is the year since 1980. So what specific year are we talking about when x is 0? In 1980, there was about 319.436 African American elected officials. When x is 0, it is talking about the year 1980. Okay? So for this section, you should be able to find the equation on your calculator, make predictions with that equation, and also interpret the pieces of that equation, the slope and the y-intercept.